Welcome to this week's episode of Uncontested Investing. I'm your host, Nate Zielinski, joined by Suzanne Andreessen, as always. And we're going to continue our series on property types and niches. Today, we're going to dive into self-storage. Not always the most exciting topic to talk about when you're discussing investment properties, but nonetheless, self-storage can carve out a great niche in this industry for investors looking to take advantage of something new. Suzanne, we can't wait to talk about all the benefits, things people may have not have even thought of, and just ways that a self-storage unit can take your portfolio to the next level.
For a couple things. One, they seem to be recession resistant, but they're multiplying like rabbits.
Yes.
I mean, they pop up everywhere and all types of environments too. I'm trying to figure out if there's really that much extra stuff that people have to put somewhere else.
Everybody's got stuff, right? So I think that's a great place to start. Why should we care about self-storage? Why is it important to us as an investor? Well, first of all, you have pretty much the entire country as a potential tenant, right? So many people need storage, and as Suzanne mentioned, it's recession-resistant, pandemic-proven. People, major life events never go away. When you're talking about moves, downsizing, divorces, marriages, combining stuff, getting rid of stuff, there's always going to be a need for a storage unit. So I think that alone can spark investors' interest, right? There's always a need. It thrived during COVID and during economic downturns. Other assets were taking a hit left and right, but self-storage remained strong. So if you ever want that added layer of your portfolio, if maybe I will go after those aggressive property types that people are seeking, where you can get that highest possible return on investment, but there's also a lot of risk involved as well. Self-storage is that straight pitch right down the middle that a lot of investors can rely on.
Well, and we touched a couple episodes on tiny houses and smaller properties. That doesn't mean that people don't want to have access to their stuff.
Yeah.
And maybe you want to keep your Christmas decoration or holiday decoration stored away until you need them. Or your bike, if you live in the city and you can't ride it in the winter.
Yep.
Because people just have spaces at a premium.
Exactly.
And what can you do when you've run out of space? So storage units just seem to be just literally popping up everywhere.
And as we're talking about it, I think it's a perfect thing for investors to see on a daily basis, right? They're involved in properties where space is at a premium. There's always going to be new tenants, new residents, new renters, whatever the case may be, that are going to need somewhere to put their stuff. So if you're an investor that has a bunch of these properties where people are living in, why not supplement that income with, hey, if you ever need anything, I own a storage unit. You should think about, renting out a unit. Obviously, you want to be as fair as possible and let them know that there's options out there, but why not just plant a business card on your way out and say, if you ever need somewhere to store your stuff, I know a guy.
I got a guy.
Yep.
But in my first apartment, I had a storage cage in the basement, which didn't make me feel that it was actually secure.
Yeah.
My stuff was there, but everyone could see it through the chicken wire.
Yep.
I think a storage unit is a way to guarantee your stuff is protected.
Yep.
Traditionally they have longer access time frames, and you can come and go as you need. So I think it's a great way, to really protect your personal possessions.
Yeah, exactly. And we talk a lot about, the risk versus reward in this industry, and how self-storage is kind of that perfect middle ground, but it also offers a high profit margin and low operating costs. And who doesn't love that as a real estate investor? Right off the bat, no tenants, no disputes to handle, no property management really. There's no toilets, so none of those systems to take care of. You don't really have to worry about trash. So a lot of costs that would be across the board at other types of residential investment properties, even commercial as well. Self-storage deals with zero of that hassle as an investor.
Well, there may be a little bit of trash, but I think you can take it on their, I'll say their down payment. Because
Okay.
if they turn around and leave stuff in the unit that they don't want now,
That's fair.
you have to get rid of it.
Yep, something to consider.
And also there's depending upon the type of storage facility, temperature controlled is really the ones that people are going after. They tend to have less varmints that also access them. So you want to make sure that you're protecting. If you're offering the property, offer some of the amenities like temperature controlled, making sure that you've got rat and mouse population at a minimum, and providing the services. And sometimes, you can offer some moving services that complement getting the goods from one to another.
Yep. And I think, no matter what self-storage unit you're potentially looking at. I think 95% of the property is metal and concrete, which are very sustainable materials, easy to clean, maintain, not going to cause many issues on that front. So another asset for investors to consider. And I think too, there's a lower liability risk, right? At a property, people can get injured, animals can get injured, accidents can happen. At a self-storage unit, obviously things can go wrong, but at a much lower clip, right? So an added feather in the cap of a self-storage unit where investors aren't always worrying about a tenant breaking their arm or needing to go to the hospital, calling the police, things of that nature.
Well, I think there's also, when you talk about low risk, there may be some upside to an insurance perspective where you can say, look, we don't insure your contents. It's up to you. However, we've got an insurance policy that you may want to participate in. So it could be a smaller revenue stream to help supplement your strategy.
It's affected a lot of parts of the real estate investment space, and it's no different for self-storage. But with the evolution of tech, it makes managing these properties so much easier as well. I know we talk about it countless times with the smart home technology. That's certainly transferable when you're talking about self-storage, right? You can even hire an on-site manager, have remote management via cameras. There's gate access, so only people with a key card can access a storage unit. I think that gives people that are buying out these units or renting out these units that extra added security blanket. You can have mobile payments and even kiosks on site, right? So if you're an investor, you're managing a self-storage unit, there's countless examples where you actually don't even need to be on the property, but you have access and can see everything, can control everything. And really, not only do the people that are renting out that unit feel safe, but you as an investor are feeling safe as well because of all the technology at your hands.
Well, and the technology grants accessibility to all of the folks that are going there. Not everyone has a 9 to 5 job, or not everyone is moving into town. One of my first moves, I showed up at like 2:30 in the morning. Fortunately, I already had access to my unit. So you weren't waiting for them to come in and open up at 9 or 10 or whatever their hours are. It provides you to have access when you need it. You put your own lock on it, so it's guaranteed that no one's going to be going through your stuff.
Yes.
And certainly just the flexibility and accessibility, I think, is a key piece. And they're not cheap.
Yeah.
I think it's for what you're getting. I think people, they need the space. They need to use their stuff in their current living space, and they're willing to pay, $200, $300 a month. That's a car payment. But people are still doing it.
Yep. And I think going back to the lower management responsibilities, another thing that's becoming prevalent in the industry is the rise of virtual assistants and call centers. And investors can certainly look into that when they're talking about handling issues, anybody that has questions about the self-storage units, the property as a whole. So I think that's a great way for investors to save money. And what that does is allow them to scale, right? They can have a few virtual assistants, maybe overseeing 5 or 6 different self-storage unit properties. So you can have multiple states operating at the same time, all feeding into one call center or a few virtual assistants. And again, the investor can take that step back, know that things are handled, and not always be on the ground at the property handling disputes, tenants, anything like that is all taken care of and much easier with a self-storage unit.
And having the virtual assistants, there's a lot of I'll say other strategies to incorporate. So you could connect with a lot of the local real estate companies and say, hey, if you've got someone who's had to move out of their house, but their property wasn't quite ready. We have a van service, and we have a short-term rental for them. 2, 3, 4 months they need. Or maybe they want to paint the house before they put their furniture in it, but had to close on one property before they can move into the next. So there's a lot of things that you can do with a storage unit, and if you're going to engage virtual assistants, take it a step farther and really reach out to folks and all types of business. And I always wish there was something, as my son's getting ready to leave college and graduating this month, or next month, I should say. But at the times when he was the summers between semesters, I wish there was a storage company that would come and say, here's your little unit, a 5x5 that they could pop in somewhere and just put all your stuff in here and come back and get it in August when you move back, versus making multiple trips to get his stuff to and from campus. I think there's a significant opportunity to even, find other avenues to support what your business strategy is.
Yeah. Yeah, having versatility, and not every unit has to be cookie cutter and look exactly alike. You can offer different size options and attract more potential clients that way. I think that's a great idea in addition to the conversation. We're going to step away for a moment. We're going to take a break. Our sponsors are going to jump in with a quick word. We'll be right back to wrap up this conversation about self-storage. Thanks, Suzanne.
See you soon. REI Inc. is the premier monthly publication for real estate investors. Dive into a wealth of expert insight and strategies from industry leaders and gain valuable regional market insights, ensuring you always have the best information at your fingertips. Visit rei-ink.com to elevate your real estate investment game today.
Welcome back to this week's episode of Uncontested Investing, where Suzanne and I have discussed self-storage units, why they're a viable option for real estate investors. And I think a perfect place to pick up this conversation is the value add that investors can infuse into these self-storage units and facilities, and really just take it from point A to point B, C, and beyond, and really start seeing some increased return on investment with minimal work. So a lot of storage units are mom and pop owned. They're not fully optimized, so it may just take some paving, some increase in technology, and you're already hitting the ground running, being able to increase the value of your storage unit or facility with those small additions.
Well, there's a lot to be said for the presentation when you go in and
Yes.
almost evaluate where you want to put your stuff, because these are your prized possessions. So I think when you go in there, is it clean? Is it temperature controlled? What is your access? What type, are you an upstairs or downstairs unit? And what can you do? But there's also what other services can be offered as a benefit to capture your interest.
Exactly.
Have they partnered with a company such as U-Haul or other moving services? What can you do to facilitate the capture of the content?
Yeah.
And then make sure that it's easily accessible for future strategies, and how can you just really make it a friendly transaction every time the tenant wants to come and take a look at their stuff.
Yep, there's other things such as online rentals, making it much more convenient for people to sign up and utilize your storage facility. There's late fees that can occur, right? If somebody's not making their payments, you're more than well within your right as a business owner to charge those. And then storage insurance, right? People want to make sure that their stuff is safe, not only based off the presentation, which Suzanne mentioned, but having that extra insurance goes above and beyond and really assures people. I think that can separate the top tier storage unit facilities from middle of the road, right? If you're taking that extra mile and ensuring all the property within a unit, huge win for you as an investor and a value add to your clients. But going back to the U-Haul partnership, I think that or some other similar moving service is huge for investors to look into when talking about self-storage. I would say there's a lot of different use cases that we've discussed throughout this episode that people want to take advantage of for self-storage. But for the most part, I would say more than half people are associating with a storage unit with a move, right? They're preparing to put stuff into place and access it once they've moved. So if you can have U-Haul come in, pay you marketing or advertising money, that's another income stream. Not only are you gaining money from people renting out your units, but U-Haul and other companies are coming in and advertising, and that's an extremely good moneymaker.
And we've touched on many, many times during all of these uncontested investing episodes on the resident experience.
Yeah.
And so what we're trying to do is make their move more pleasant. So if you say, hey, Nate, I know that you guys are moving. I'd love to offer you this access to my van, even if they don't even use the storage unit. They'll come to you at a future date, or maybe they say, Nate, I know that your house isn't going to be ready on the other side. Let's go ahead and put your stuff in here for 2.5 months, and then we'll help you move it back in when your house is ready. So there are a lot of things that you can do with that. But there's a whole other avenue I think that we haven't touched on yet, and I see a lot of it when you look at outside the storage units. I see a lot of boats and campers stored on the exterior.
Yeah.
So now you're seeing people putting their stuff inside, and they're also storing stuff outside that's weather dependent.
Yes.
So there's a whole other strategy that you can supplement even the footprint of your storage units.
Yeah, I guess we can call them docking fees or parking fees. There's other elements, and like we said, with cameras, a gate access through like a key card or something like that.
Sure.
People are very comfortable with leaving other things inside that storage facility, and it increases your return on investment. And to go back to the U-Haul conversation before we switch topics here, I don't think they have any major controversies or bad stories that I'm aware of. So if you can put a trusted company like U-Haul on the side of your storage unit, I think that just gives you an extra leg up on the competition of people associating a positive company such as U-Haul with your storage facility. It's, again, a win-win right there.
And you can throw in, I'll say, the access of a van or a truck.
Yes. Yep.
To move
Or
your contents.
the box package.
Sure,
Yeah.
all of that. There's all kinds of stuff that'll help.
Throw in that add-on.
To make it feel that they've got something out of the relationship.
Certainly.
But the best part is storage wars.
Right? You could be featured on the next episode.
If they don't pay their bills, you never know there could be a Rembrandt somewhere in there.
Pick up the phone, call, what is it, A&E? HGTV, am I getting the channel right there? But yes, always thinking, Suzanne. I love that.
Storage wars are great.
Speaking of value add, Suzanne Andreessen, our co-host. The last topic worth talking about with self-storage for this episode is going to be the wide market flexibility, right? So again, a lot of these things that we talk about, we want to make sure that investors across the country can benefit from these conversations that we're having. Self-storage plays in urban, suburban, rural areas, and it's not just for individuals as well. So many times you think of a family moving, needing a storage unit. I think it'll take a little bit more energy and inspiration from an investor. But if they go out and attract small businesses that want to rent out units, right? If they have too much inventory, equipment that they're not using yet or will need at a later date, the opportunities are endless to go out and kind of leave a card, say, hey, if you have any questions, want to utilize our services, not only are people coming to you in need of holding their stuff there, but you can go out and attract businesses that can leave equipment or any other things such as that within your storage unit.
And our predominant audience are single family investors and residents. And, and we talked about having the virtual assistants and helping, garner future business, reaching out to all the investors that, and all the real estate companies. There's a significant opportunity to fill up, and it always seems that there's never enough storage units.
Yes.
So I think that there's always a need. They seem to be growing up, popping up out of nowhere, and a rural environment, is not too far for someone to drive to get a lower storage rate.
Yeah, and I think it goes. That's a perfect circling back to the VA discussion that we were having. Not only can the virtual assistants or the call centers be fielding calls about questions about the unit, but now they can be cold calling and going out and trying to attract business back. So it kind of works both ways.
Sure.
Of, if you're calling any businesses in a given zip code, hey, have you ever considered storage? We're right down the street. We can offer those services for you. I think it's a win-win if you're thinking about hiring a virtual assistant to manage some of these storage unit facilities.
Throw a little commission in on that.
Yep.
Every storage unit contract you get a little piece of the pie. I think that's a win-win for everybody.
Yep. Tie it into maybe a local business can then in turn advertise on a flyer or something similar that you offer at the storage facility. So it can really be a win-win for the community, and people can kind of build that trust between businesses.
Sure. It's a great strategy. And everyone wants their stuff secured.
There we go. So there you have it. Self-storage, not as boring as you thought, huh? Investors can really benefit from this investment strategy. Don't leave any stone unturned in your real estate investment career. Maybe self-storage isn't for you, but maybe it is. You don't know until you give it a shot. So there's Suzanne and I endorsement of self-storage unit facilities. And we will catch you guys on the next episode of Uncontested Investing. Thank you so much for joining us.
I'll see you soon.
Thank you for listening to Uncontested Investing. Questions about today's episode or the podcast? Email podcast@rcncapital.com and make sure to follow REI Inc. magazine on LinkedIn and Facebook and RCN Capital on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. See you all next time.